Chapter 10. What I Heard in the Apple Barrel, and Afterward. We worked well into the night. I was thrilled with the sea talk and quick banter of the men. As we worked, Long John raised up his crutch like a baton and started up his fast-paced sea shanty. 15 men on a dead man's chest, and the whole crew joined in. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. Even then, in my excitement, it brought me back to our own captain at the inn. Before I knew it, we were on our voyage to Treasure Island. The voyage was long, and the Hispaniola soon proved itself to be an able vessel that sped us along on our journey. Not so with Mr. Arrow. He often seemed seasick, and though the doctor tried to look after him, he stumbled about on deck and had to be helped into bed as often as not. One day he disappeared entirely. "Well," said Captain Smollett, "that's a relief. Overboard and good riddance." And with this, the captain had to find a new mate, and did so in Israel Hands, the wily old seaman who was a great friend of Long John Silver. Long John himself turned out to be a great seaman in his own way. He was quick and nimble and ever helpful, and the men loved him dearly. I spent much of my time by his side in the galley, helping with the cooking, with Long John and his parrot for my only company. "I call my parrot," he told me, "Captain Flint, after the famous pirate." At this, the parrot would squawk out, "Pieces of eight, and would carry on until his master covered the cage with a shred of torn sail. He then told me of its great age and the parrot's many voyages. During this time, we drew close, and I thought him the best of men and a true friend. In the meantime, Captain Smollett and the squire remained distant. Everything about the captain's displeasure interfered with Mr. Trelawney's sense of adventure and joy at being aboard. The crew, on the other hand, never had an easier time of it, I imagine. There was good wind and good food for all, and even a big barrel of apples on deck at all times for any to take his pick of the sweet fruit. All of this the captain considered taking away from us, but as you will see, the apple barrel did eventually serve its purpose. If not for that barrel, we might have had no warning and might all have been killed in a foul manner. Late one day, as the sun was going down, I chose to go and find an apple for myself out of the barrel, and finding it nearly empty, crawled right in to get to the bottom. Once inside, I sat there with the darkness coming on and began to feel quite sleepy. Suddenly, though, I heard a muffled voice and sensed a body leaning against the barrel that I knew to be Silver himself. After hearing only the first few words, I trembled with fear. For now I knew that the lives of the few honest men left on board depended on me alone. The fearful whispering continued. "Flint was captain, and I was quartermaster. It was on that voyage," continued Silver, "that I lost my leg and Pew lost his eyes. That ship was dripping with red blood, and fit to sink with all the gold we found." I soon heard that he was spinning yarns for the youngest hand on deck, who was thrilled with his tales. I blushed to hear him use the same compliments on this lad that he had used on me. I knew then that I had been played for a fool. I was filled with rage and shame. "We gentlemen of fortune live rough and lean, but when we get back to shore, we carry hundreds of pounds, not handfuls of coins. I began just like you, but made my fortune at sea. By now, my wife has sold my tavern and taken all my money. We'll meet up again one day, I'm sure. Oh, on our journeys, some feared Flint, and some feared Pew, but all feared Long John Silver. That was the roughest crew afloat. The devil himself would have been afraid to sail with them. I'll tell you I am not a boasting man, but you may be sure of yourself on old John's ship." It was clear the lad was under his influence, and Silver continued to flatter and stroke him. Soon enough, as John continued to talk of gentlemen of fortune, I understood that he meant pirates, and that he himself was one. By and by, Israel, one of the crew, came up to talk with them. "Look here, John and Dick," he said. "How long are we going to stand off? I've had enough of Captain Smollett, by thunder." Then Silver turned hard on the man. "You'll attack now and take away the captain who can steer this ship to the treasure? Or for a better berth to lay your scurvy head in? You'll wait, and you'll act only on my signal." "And then," asked Israel, "what do we do with them?" "My vote," said Long John, "is death. When I'm living like a king later, I don't want survivors coming back to have me hanged. Now, Dick, have yourself a sweet apple from this here barrel, courtesy of me." With this I froze, for I knew the game was over. I thought of running, but could find no strength. But Israel himself saved my life, saying he was too excited by the thought of their mutiny to eat anything more that day. Long John laughed a wicked laugh, while Israel headed below decks. Suddenly, the moon came up, and the call went over the sail as the lookout shouted, "Land ho!" With that, all the ship's men were on deck, trying to stare through the fog at our destination. The captain gave out orders and asked if any had seen this island. To my surprise, Long John's voice rang out, admitting he had once stayed there. When the captain asked him where we might anchor, John answered him clearly. "Skeleton Island, they call it. It was a pirate's place at one time, but no more. That hill is the foremast hill, and that big one the spyglass, as they used it for a lookout." With that, the captain produced a chart for Silver to see. As the pirate leaned forward, I saw his disappointment, for this was a new chart that laid out the island, but with no red crosses or written notes leading to the treasure. Silver still pointed out where we might anchor, and complimented the captain on bringing us so speedily to our destination. I was now truly frightened of Silver, and as he drew up to me, I shivered. "Oh, Hawkins, son, this is a sweet spot, this island. I'll pack you a lunch, and we'll go and spend an afternoon exploring. I remember being here as a youth myself." With that, he clapped me on the shoulder and left me while I turned my attention to the doctor. I hurriedly told him that something terrible had happened, and that he should find an excuse to get below decks with the captain and Mr. Trelawney, and then to call me down too. He wasted no time explaining the situation to the captain, who called all hands to deck. "Lads," he said, "this is the island we've been sailing for, and to celebrate, Mr. Trelawney will provide double rations today and tomorrow for every sailor aboard. Please excuse us now, while we go below decks and have a feast for ourselves." With that, there was a cheer for the squire and the captain, led by Long John himself, that treacherous pirate. Then the three men headed below decks, and soon called me to join them. "Well, Hawkins," said the squire, "speak your mind." With that, I told them all that had happened. They then sat me down, patting me on the back and congratulating me for all the good work I had done. "I have been a fool," the squire said, but the captain was quick to confess that he too had been taken in by the crew's hard work. Now they all cursed Long John Silver's name for leading them astray. It was time to figure out how many honest men were still on board. We counted no more than 7. There's nothing to do but wait until we know who is honest and who is not. We shall have to lay back and wait and see. That's the best we can do. "Hawkins," said the squire, "I put my faith in you. Whatever you can find out will be important to us." With this I felt deep fear. There were 6 of us, 7 if I included myself, against 19 hardened pirates. Chapter 11. How my shore adventure began. The next morning, the island looked quite different. Its gray solemn forest and stretches of golden sand, its 3 distinct hills topped by the spyglass itself, all put fear in my heart. The ship rocked, and I felt seasick and ill and thought my adventure ruined, for I now hated the very thought of Treasure Island. Throughout the heat of the day, we worked away quietly, but the crew had suddenly become surly and mean. Only Long John tried to keep them from seeming so. It became obvious that mutiny was upon us, and as we drew up to the cove where we would moor, not a sound stirred. The only thing we could hear was the crashing of waves. We, who had met in council only the night before, knew that Long John's worry was the worst proof we could have. We met once again in the cabin to try to decide upon the course that was best. "If I give another order," said the captain, "there will be mutiny. And if I don't, Silver will know that I am laying back because I know of his plan. Then we'd be done for." "Well," said the squire, "what can we do?" "I propose," said the captain, "sending the men ashore for an afternoon. If all go over to Silver's side, we must fight the ship. If none do, we hold the cabin only. But if only some go, mark my words, Silver will bring them back calm and in order, as mild lambs." And so it was decided. We brought Hunter, Joyce, and Redruth into our plan and gave each a pistol. The captain went to the deck and announced the free leave. "As many as would like," he offered, "may go ashore. I will fire a gun a half-hour before sundown to let you know when to return to the ship." With that, the men jumped up as if they thought they would find treasure the minute they stepped from the boat. They ceased looking downcast and were bright and chipper. The captain quickly went below, and, sure enough, Silver organized the men as if he were already their captain. The honest men who went along were just dullards, or were lazy and idle. Most had let themselves be led astray in order to avoid having to work. But it is altogether another thing to join in a plot to take a ship and murder innocent men. At the end, 13 men went ashore, and 6 stayed on board. It was then that I became either brave or stupid. I can't say which, but I decided to hide myself in one of the boats. It was not the boat Silver was in, but he saw that I had slipped aboard, and called out my name more than once. When our boat landed at the beach first, I leapt out and, taking off into the trees, disappeared into the forest. I had begun to regret my decision, but I ran, and kept running until I could run no more. Chapter 12. The Man of the Island. I was thrilled to have given Silver the slip, and began to enjoy exploring the island. It was full of strange things to see, enough to excite the imagination and curiosity of any boy my age. I wish I could remember all of them, but my young mind was overwhelmed at the time with all the vivid new colors and sights. I could have spent a month just taking in all the strange plants and trees I came upon. I had marched across some marshy tract of land full of swaying willows and bulrushes, which I had read about in the Bible, and odd-shaped trees that rose up out of the swamp. Then there was some wave-like, sandy country that went on for about a mile. There you could see pines and twisted-looking trees that resembled oak, except for their purplish tinge. In the distance, I could see one of the hills, with its craggy peak, shining brightly beneath the harsh sun. Now I really began to feel like I was an explorer. I felt free and full of joy, forgetting for a time the many dangers I was facing. The island was truly uninhabited. My shipmates were left behind, and before me nothing lived but unfamiliar birds and other creatures that went running or flying for cover as soon as I approached. There were tortoises with backs so large they looked like bathing tubs, and magical flowering plants of a size and shape you only come upon in dreams. Suddenly, I heard a rustle among the bulrushes. A wild duck flew up with a quack. Then another followed, and then another. Soon, along the whole surface of the marsh, a great cloud of birds hung screaming and circling in the air. I knew my shipmates must be coming up close, so I ran quickly and crouched behind the nearest tree not far from the swamp and waited, silent as a mouse. I heard voices, and among them one I knew to be Silver's. I overcame my fear and crawled closer to catch the meaning of their words. "You're more valuable than gold to me. That's why I'm warning you now. You can't change the plan. You can only save yourself by joining in. Come on now, Tom. Tell me what they would do to me if they knew I was telling you all this now." "Silver," said Tom, "you may have let yourself be led away, but not me. I'd sooner lose my hand than turn against—" Suddenly, we all heard a cry of anger and then a terrible, drawn-out scream. The noise echoed across the crags of the spyglass, and the birds rose again in a rush. I knew it was a death cry, and Tom jumped to his feet. "What was that?" he asked. "That," answered Silver.
"That'll be Allen."
"Allen!" cried out Tom.
"Well then, rest his soul. And as for you, Long John Silver, you're no mate of mine. I may die, but if I do, it will be for duty's sake. You've killed Allen, have you? Well, I defy you to kill me!"
And with that, Tom started running away. But Silver, full of new strength, steadied himself, leaned back, and aimed his crutch. Its point drove at the center of Tom's back, and he fell with a cry. I had no time to tell if this had hurt him badly. Silver was soon on him, and, with his knife out, had driven 2 quick stabs into him to end his life. I heard Silver panting. I felt faint, but managed not to pass out as I watched him wipe the blood from his knife. The whole scene was playing over in my mind. Silver then pulled a whistle from his pocket and blew it twice. I knew that the other men would be coming quickly now, and if they had killed those 2 honest men, would they not kill me? I began to crawl back, and as I did so, I heard a chorus of voices ring out. I turned, racing through the thicket, until I ran only on fear. I needed to return to the ship with the men, but how could I? As I thought it through again, I knew they would wring my neck if I tried. I said my silent goodbyes to the Hispaniola, to the doctor, and to the squire and captain. I knew there remained for me only death by starvation or at the hands of the mutineers. Yet I continued to make speed through the trees until I was at the foot of a little hill. There, my heart thumping, a fresh alarm brought me to a standstill. Suddenly, I saw a shadow move just beyond my eye, and knew I was not alone. I stood stock still as I saw it run past me, almost doubled over. I could not tell if it was a man or monkey. I started running again, and saw that it was set on cutting me off, and so became more afraid of it than of Silver. But I readily remembered that I had a pistol with me, and turned briskly to face the mountain man. He stepped out of the trees and walked toward me. "Who are you?" I asked.
"Ben Gunn,"
he answered, with a voice rusty and awkward from lack of use.
"I'm poor Ben Gunn, and I haven't spoken to a soul in 3 years."
I could see now he was a man like me, however sunburned and bearded he was. His lips were cracked, and he was dressed in rags made from pieces of old ship's canvas. I asked him if he had been shipwrecked.
"No, marooned,"
he answered. I had heard this word before and knew what it meant. A terrible punishment, where someone accused of a crime is left all alone on an island to fend for himself. Then he told me how he had survived on goats, berries, and oysters, and that he had long dreamed of eating cheese once again. "Well," I told him, "if I can get back on my ship, you shall have it." I then told Ben my name, and he told me with a crazed grin and in a whisper a great secret.
"Jim," he hissed, "I have nothing, but I am rich."
He went on to tell me that he would make me a rich man too, and asked quickly if my ship was Flint's. Suddenly, I trusted him, and told him that the ship was not Flint's, and that Flint was dead, and that some of the men were Flint's and were mutineers and murderers.
"Not a man with 1 leg?"
he gasped. "Yes, Silver is their leader," I answered, seeing him shiver. I told him at this point all that had happened.
"Do you think," he asked, "if I could help, the squire would take me on, and perhaps let me keep 1,000 pounds of this money?"
I answered that he would of course do so. Then Ben revealed to me that he had been on board with Flint's men when Flint had gone ashore with 6 men and buried the treasure. These 6 he had somehow killed with his own hands, and had never told a soul on board where the treasure was. Those who asked were told they were welcome to stay on the island and try to find the treasure. Of course, they all said no. But poor Ben was back with another ship 3 years later, and, upon seeing the island, had told the crew he could find the treasure. After 3 days of searching, they cursed his name and left him to fend for himself, leaving him only a musket, a spade, and a shovel.
"Well, you tell your squire," he said, "that when not pining for home and for cheese, Ben has been occupied with another matter that should interest him.
I answered that of course I would, but that I had no way of getting back to the ship.
Well,
Said Ben, pointing to a cove,
we could always, in a pinch, use this little boat that I have made. I keep it by a white rock that lies farther down toward the shore.
and with that, we heard cannon fire and gunshots ringing out through the air. The sun was still high in the sky. I knew that the fighting aboard ship had begun. Ben kept me low and out of sight. Then he pointed some distance ahead to where the English flag fluttered in the wind. Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you are feeling generous, check out my Ko-fi link on my channel for donations. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.